America once tried to use bats as bombs during World War II, and as crazy as that sounds, it's actually true. Dental surgeon Lytle Adams was a friend of First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. Shortly after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Adams took a trip to Carlsbad Caverns National Park, which is home to many bats. And through some mental process that must have been fueled by an acid trip or something, he came up with the idea to attach time-released incendiaries to the bats, then cram a bunch of those firebomb-carrying bats into a bigger bomb, and then release those bombs from a plane over Japan. This is because Adams knew that bats were exceptionally strong for their size and that most of the buildings in Japan were constructed from wood. After coming up with this fever dream of a plan, he then wrote a letter to President Franklin Roosevelt. In the letter, Adams describes bats as the lowest form of animal life, and he also stated that bats were created, quote, by God to await this hour to play their part in the scheme of free human existence, and to frustrate any attempt of those who dare desecrate our way of life, end quote. Now, I know what you're thinking. President Roosevelt must have opened that letter, read it, and demanded to have Adams immediately thrown into an insane asylum. But instead, Roosevelt said, quote, this man is not a nut. It sounds like a perfectly wild idea, but it's worth looking into, end quote. Clearly, this is the era of mercury in hats and cocaine in soda. The project was handed off to the U.S. Air Force, where it was designated Project X-Ray. After testing several species of bat, they decided that the Mexican free-tailed bat was the best bat for the job. Adams harvested several million bats from national parks, and then they decided on the incendiary that would be used. At first, they wanted to use white phosphorus, but that would be ridiculous. So they chose to glue 15 grams of napalm to each bat instead. 5-foot-long bomb carriers were constructed, and 1,040 bats will be placed in each, which means each bomb carrier will be holding a payload of 34 pounds of napalm. The Air Force then decided to test these bat bombs, and things didn't go very well. Armed bats were accidentally released on Carlsbad Army Airfield in New Mexico, and the bats ended up roosted under a fuel tank. The entire test range was incinerated. After this massive failure, the project was then reassigned to the Marines. And the idea of crayon-eating Marines landing in Japan flanked by bats with napalm glued to their chest is absolutely amazing. The Marines constructed a mock Japanese village in Utah and performed several tests. It was determined that the bats were actually very effective weapons. However, the cost of developing the bomb had reached $2 million by 1944, and by that time, the atomic bomb was seen as a much quicker way to end the war, so Project X-Ray was scrapped. Lytle Adams later stated that the bat bomb would have been just as effective as the atomic bomb, but without all the devastating effects and death. I guess we'll never know.